Yeah, when do you hook up with Joe?
97.
That's early. And then how do you guys connect?
Yeah, what was the first time you met him? Do you remember?
At the store. I was in Boise, Idaho doing the Funny Bone.
Okay.
And there was a thing called the 12, what was that movie they did with the
12 Monkeys?
No, the 12, the Dirty Dozen. Dirty Dozen. Dom Herrera and Joe was on that. That's the first time I ever saw Joe with a backwards hat on. I never even knew who he was.
Okay.
Didn't pay attention ever again. It was just somebody, I watched it for Dom Herrera, maybe somebody else. Was I in LA already? No, I was not. I was living in Seattle at the time. When I met Joe Rogan, he was on news radio.
Yeah.
I didn't fucking know what news radio was.
Yeah.
I was on stage every night.
Yeah.
If a comic knows a TV show,
They're not
you're
on stage.
fucking up.
Yeah.
You shouldn't know what's on TV at all.
Yeah.
Because from 7:45 on, you should be out at night. You should be out. So I didn't know. I didn't watch TV for years.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what NYPD was till I got to LA. And they sent me on an audition. I'm like, what's NYPD Blue? And they had to break it down for me.
Yeah.
I didn't know dick. So when I met Joe, they kept saying news radio. I thought he was a weather guy. They thought he was fucking anchorman or something. News radio, news radio, news radio. I thought he was a fucking anchorman or some shit. But he was he worked on news radio.
And he didn't smoke weed or anything back then, right?
Back then, he was still a gorilla on all fours. That's what I always tell him. You ever see those gorillas on all fours? That's who Joe was rough, tough, and inspiring.
Really?
Because Joe, I always loved stand-up, but Joe put the love into me. Like,
really?
Yeah, because he's on news radio. He's making $30,000 a week.
And he's still getting up.
And he's still coming to the store after a 15-hour day to do a 15-minute set.
Yeah.
A $15 set. That's character, bro.
Yeah.
Most people get a TV show, you don't see him.
And they fucking check out.
You don't see him no more. Not only would he still show up, but he would show up after a fucking 10 a.m. in the morning to 10 o'clock at night shooting day on news radio, and he would still be there 11:45. That gives you something. That makes you go, okay.
Yeah.
He likes this.
I like this.
Do you remember when he asked you to do the podcast the first time? What did you even think a podcast was?
Well, we were doing podcasts at night on the road. They didn't start like that.
Oh, really?
They didn't start in the studio. We would do a comedy show and then go back to his hotel room, and him and Brian would talking shit.
I was watching, you were on episode 25 of the Joe Rogan Experience. So you're the earliest, because Kreischer was on at like 79 or 80 or something like that. You were on super early. So I was curious about that. I'm glad you asked how that
So we were doing it at
happened.
night. We would do a show and then do it at night. And then one night I'm like, why am I doing this? Who the fuck is at home Friday at midnight? 13-year-old kids.
Yeah.
That's who's home. Why the fuck are we doing this, Joe? Let's go shoot pool. Let's go smoke pot, something. And that's when he started doing the podcast. And then him and Brian kept doing something. You heard little rumblings of the guy from the Man Show.
Adam Carolla?
Adam Carolla.
Yeah.
And then you had Mark Maron. That was the easiest. Those are the earliest signs of podcasting. But again, on my end, I always knew this. I always knew that if I got to tell my story, the comedy game would change for me. Because I'm a big fan of like HBO boxing.
Yeah, of course.
And I might hate you as a boxer, but I might watch that.
And all of a sudden, I love you.
And all of a sudden, they show you
24/7.
two daughters.
Oh, yeah.
They show you going up to the Bronx and eating fried bananas with Cuban people. And I'm like, this guy ain't that fucking bad. I'm going to follow him a little more. So I always knew, because all comics have are jokes.
Yeah.
You base me on a joke. You think you know me from me doing a joke, but you don't know I got 3 kids. You don't know I put mascara on and play house with them and drink tea. You just see me as a big gorilla. I knew that if I got to tell my story, I could do something with comedy. So when the podcast platform came up, I was like, ugh, it's like comedy again. I know it'll change my life, but I don't want to do it. And then finally I broke down and did it, and everything changed. And again, we were doing a podcast for maybe 6 months, and nothing happened. And I told a story about mugging a hooker and taking her back to Jersey and lighting a wig on fire. And that next weekend, I had 200 people at my show.